So nobody's talking about Snakepliskenist, which is weird. It's sort of interesting. I'd missed the videos, and in Gary Stickham it was mentioned. It's like there was this channel implosion. I find it interesting. Specifically considering snakes, you gotta perform and be more charming and stuff. Angle to his presentation, there's a point at which you could say, yeah, we're all artists, unwilling artists. You make a video of yourself talking, don't fool yourself, just because maybe it's finger painting, but it's still sort of like art. You might make it look pathetic by looking at it that way, or maybe it's just an analytic tool. But it is useful. I've assumed Snakepliskenist is a performance artist. Not because he thinks he is, or because he said, things along those lines. He admitted to the lying thing and stuff, which was obvious. But it's like cultural hacking, or is that what they call it? Performance art, right? When they, just weird multimedia art. And it could be whatever. And it's like with deconstruction. I mean, I'm not a big fan of actual deconstruction. And who's that dude? Derrida. Not specifically the details, the way they looked at it, but this general idea that the meaning in a work of art or anything is in the eye of the beholder, and in all the other eyes of the beholder, and in the artist, and really it's this big complex set, and I don't know if they emphasize that well enough for my liking, but basically my view of the meaning is all of that, all of a complex web of all those relationships, right? And so, sometimes it doesn't matter how conscious the art was. Like a one-hit wonder. There's bands like Jefferson Airplane, White Rabbit, Inspired. As far as I'm concerned, even though they did continue going, they're a one-hit wonder. That was Inspired. I'm not saying this is the absolute truth, but I'm just using it as an example. So I believe they were really inspired in that song, and it captures something that was brilliant. But they couldn't do a bunch of brilliant songs, but that song was still brilliant. So that implies maybe, they didn't know there was an element of luck, but not just luck, like they're absorbing something from their environment, or, maybe there's a little story of how that came together, and they had an inspirational moment. To me, that kind of phenomena reinforces that we should interpret the greatness and meaning, or lack of greatness, or just all the character and flavor and color of a performance interpretationally, right? And then it becomes a separate question of like the biography of the artist. Were they really that way? Some character actors that play a particular kind of character a lot are sort of that way in life. More often they're not. And they've mastered that character probably so well because they're not that way, and maybe they had a relative, or they made a study of this sort of a personality. Okay, so what am I getting at? So, well, I think this performance artist aspect is a way to approach Snake, because frankly, a lot more of his shtick turned out to be legit, I guess, than I would have thought. I mean, one of my first videos to him, first I think, I was joking around about how he and I were whalers on the sea of antinatalism or something, because he made a video about antinatalism. And it was sort of because I had assumed the eye patch was just a prop. I mean, it just looks like the temporary kind of eye patch people get for lazy eye or recovering from surgery, possibly. And that it's a temporary thing. So, you know, I backed off from that because he kind of was like, no. But other times I said, you know, that how he sees, you know, and through his eyes, and then he made comments back. We got one eye, motherfucker. And I mean, I appreciate that part of the thing where it's just like, you know, telling unbelievable stuff. I'm 65. I mean, he couldn't have, you know, he did comedic tells. Not that they were actually funny, but I mean just a classical stage tell. When you say you're 65 and you're Russian and you're Spanish and you farm turnips, I mean, he fairly conveyed you shouldn't take him seriously. So, you know, if I'd had my dream of how it all worked out in the end, it would have been like, yeah, it's fucking with you, I am a feminist, or yeah, it's fucking with you, I'm not a feminist, but they would, well, I just, anyway, it's funny. I mean, the joke is always on the fanboys, the fanboy commenters in these kind of situations, I think. I mean, when you think of some flameouts like Captain Awesome or Spinoza and Naomi, I mean, they really showed bad character to the level of, oh, okay, they have bad character. Doesn't mean they can't do it good in their life, just probably not. No, it doesn't even mean that, but it does mean there's a bad character, a bad streak or whatever that makes you go, you know. And, I mean, his is, you know, Snake's situation is like, wait, compared to that, but, oh yeah, you might not know. Maybe I'll put the links down. Somebody did mirror the videos that got taken down, but Snake had this crazy story that he was trying to make the Femitheist more popular as a way to impress Girl Writes What so he could sleep with Girl Writes What. Which is like, what? It's possible. She's a very handsome woman, but it seems more likely he had the crush on the Femitheist, or maybe even none of that is true. And I'm pretty sure whatever he has said, the facts are plugged in wrong, like this and that, you know, just to keep everybody else confused. And it's sort of sad. It makes a lot of his formula look unconscious. Like, it's just a display of what he's unconsciously driven to construct, rather than a conscious satire. Because, yeah, just thing on thing, or there's other little things that I find interesting, like in this video he admits that most of his subscribers are MRA and MRA oriented, but when I was arguing with him, he's all like, what? You know, it was the whole denial of that, what? So, you know, and just, you know, people that try to play it like, oh, this conversation is bullshit, and it's unimportant, and I'm above that, but I'm good at what's left, you know, Mad Max. And then they're the ones that are caught up in the petty little, like, you know, conspiracies and plans. And I mean, for that matter, I feel that way about that Mr. Repzion video that Snake, you know, did his thing with, where Repzion had to, snake bite, fake, you know, little piercings, and, you know, just trolling your audience like that with a little scheme, you know, I'd include that, you know, but Snake claims to have urged the pesky dames to flag his videos, and then he denies it in another video. It's like, it's sad because it doesn't look like a conscious, hey, I'll construct. Like, I just watched this movie Kumare. And the guy pretends was raised a Hindu in Connecticut, I think it was. Totally speaks with an American accent. Studied, was going to make a documentary on gurus. Instead, he decides to pretend to be a guru, mimics his grandmother's accent, goes to Arizona, gets a bunch of followers, and makes a documentary about it, and tells the people in the end. Okay, complicated, emotionally complicated. Is it betrayal or not? It depends maybe on what his message is and what he did about it. So, what he did with this opportunity. Okay. So, the nice thing there, though, that even if you disapprove, the guy was conscious. He was making a plan, and you could judge his character based on this conscious thing. So it's unfortunate that Snakes looks a little bit unconscious. You know, I mean, when he's just scrambling the facts and lying back and forth and stuff and looking a little panicky, it's like, well, that you don't care about stuff, that must not be true. But I'm not surprised, because he said all along, it's like, well, you ought to care about subscriptions, and here's why I'm doing this, and subscriptions, and these shallow things. And so, especially in America, we're very good at putting on the rebel without a cause, you know, kind of clothing and outfit, right? So we could just be cynical and badass. We don't really have to have a cause. But the thing is, what's really going on in the background is often some high school drama, or, you know, just something especially petty, right? Just especially, you know, way below the stuff they're saying they're above. Because they're saying they're above pretending to care about the things they're talking about. Like, you don't have to be consistent. It doesn't really matter. I call an idiot like I see it, and that's good. And the commenters in Snake, you know, actually, he demolished you. His argumentation is great. And I would rather it turn out someone like Snake knew his arguing was ridiculous, and that was the hoax. You know, not like the hoax is that I flag myself and blame the pesky dames. The hoax is that I got them to flag myself. The hoax is that I didn't really do that, but I told Krista. The hoax is that I went to sleep. Much more interested would I be if the hoax, you know, was something substantive about, you know, the topics being discussed, right? Like, for example, I noticed, you see, I step back from this. I don't actually assume that I understand the psychology of a person. I wantonly make up my theories and optional theories and stuff, but I tend to step back. And with Snake, you know, I noticed, Jesus Christ, he has prompted me to make more feminism videos in the last 6 months than I've made in 6 years prior, right? I never watched Mr. Repzion. I knew who he was. He talks about Onision sometimes. I don't regularly watch him. I hadn't seen him in a long time. Do not watch the Pesky Dames. Hadn't heard of them, but even now that I've heard of them, it's like I have no beef with them, but it's not like I would watch them on my own. Snake's subscribers even say, oh, you make those terrible videos watchable. In other words, thank you, Snake. I want to watch what feminists have to say, but I need more salt. Thanks for adding salt. And don't you see? They're watching those videos. Like, it's a stroke of brilliance if some internet satirist comes along with this performance and consciously is like, you know what? I like these soft-spoken kids like Repzion. I like these feminists that aren't calling us all rapists. They're just trying to say, ooh, this and ooh, that about real stuff. I like them. I'm going to promote them by pretending to be a critic of them, like Stephen Colbert or whatever. That could be a stroke of brilliance. But that the guy that decided to do the manipulation really believes the thing he believes and just thought it would also be fun not to have any rules for himself and to try to manipulate audiences and stuff like it fucking matters. I mean, had it all worked, I had not heard of the Fematheist, and I would never have heard of her except for Snake. And not because he popularized her, because I only heard of her. I didn't start watching her. I didn't subscribe. I only heard of her. It's not... What? How could that matter? And the level of the subterfuge has gotten to the point where it's hard to not think that Snake is fooling himself. He's lying to himself. That's why the lies are so intertwined, and it doesn't really matter when some of them get exposed because it's the important lies that need to be protected, you know? And a lot of times people that get webbed up in lies, not because they're doing satire, they're the yes men and they're authoring these untruths as part of a work of untruth art, but really they themselves are untruthful. They get mixed up in this web and they forget that they start protecting certain lies as the important ones. Meanwhile, everybody knows they're a liar. They don't care because people will never find out the truth. That's what they're worried about. But people find out the truth that they're just liars. And, you know, how this kind of stuff turns out affects how I take it, you know, the deconstruction. Because, again, if it was intentional, I could go, well, that was too far and I didn't like this or I didn't like that. But as a work of art, it's sort of like, okay, at least you understood what you were doing. And we disagree about that. But when you appear not to really understand what you were doing, and you were just impulsive, and you're just you're resorting to the lowest common denominator, not because you understand that denominator and you want to expose it for what it is, but just instinctively, like anybody, and your defense of it was genuine, you really defended. There's no way to provide the satirical point, and it's just a drama mess and a kind of implosion. But with a just deconstructive attitude, you know, you could get the same lesson from it. So yeah, I find it an interesting thing, and I mean, my opinion of Snake hasn't changed at all. I mean, in fact, since it's an open, ongoing story, I mean, if Snake were to come back and go, just be honest, you know, well, this part was conscious, this part wasn't, whatever, I'm not saying I'm a big master planner, but I was trying to have a master plan, and here, you know, I would accept that, because I saw glimpses that he has a lot of knowledge and attitudes. He's just particularly cynical and, you know, possibly sociopathically so. But possibly not. You never know.